panel discussion for this camp meeting. It's Friday. Good to have you here with us. Today we're going to be talking about conference resources. What resources are available to local churches? Let's go see if we can find some people to tell us what they think are available to them. What's the purpose of a conference?
What did they do?
The purpose of the Kentucky-Tennessee Conference is to provide us with pastors in the area.
I think it's to try and draw people together.
Well, actually, they kind of administrate over the churches.
It's an organization to head up the smaller organizations that's within our church.
To help other churches, to build membership.
To be able to work together and make decisions for the whole church.
It's a good way to organize evangelism, organize education.
To disperse funds to the pastors and the teachers, and to provide guidance.
They kind of keep the churches in check.
And I think they do a great job here in Kentucky, Tennessee.
What kind of resources are available from the conference to local churches?
Oh, they offer a lot of resources I didn't realize.
Anything from like funding on bigger projects.
Coming to our church to help us out on different projects that we have within our church.
We've done evangelistic meetings in the past year.
Seminars that they provide.
Creation health and depression and
Literature.
I'm a retired teacher, and I had plenty of resources from the conference to help out with the education of the kids and things like that.
They sometimes help with loans to the churches.
I believe they help subsidize some of the tuition for some of the kids.
They provide evangelists to different people.
I think they help pay the insurance, a part of the insurance for the churches.
The books and stuff that they put out through the ABC.
There was differences among our congregation, and the conference level people from the ministers came from there to help try to straighten things out so that there was more unity in our group.
all you have to do is call and ask, and they'll let you use the resources they have.
What's one thing our conference does that you're thankful for?
Camp meeting.
Camp meeting.
Camp meeting.
Camp meeting.
And I sure love the camp meeting this year because it has a good program.
And camp.
Indian Creek Camp.
I'm grateful for the attention that they're giving, just like this program here, to try and draw people together.
Well, I'm grateful because when you need them, they're there.
Probably having a listening ear to the pastors and to the constituents, which are the members of the churches.
Women's ministry.
When I got tracts, there was a lady there that helped me to get the tracts, and I just walked in, and usually you have to order, and she was so grateful and so nice. She told me if I had 10 minutes, she'd get it all together, and I could be on my way with them. I thought I was going to have to come back, but she's like, no. So, yeah, I'm grateful for the conference.
Today, for our final panel discussion, we're going to be talking about resources that are available to you from the conference level. I think that sometimes our church members don't know how many resources are at their fingertips if they just know what's out there. So today I just wanted to put together a panel of people from the conference office. Obviously, I don't have everybody here that could tell you there's so many other things. So I'm hoping that, between all of us, we'll try to cover even the people that aren't here, some of those resources that are available to you as church members. And that through knowing what those resources are, you're able better to do ministry in your local church because you know what those resources are. So again, we're going to introduce our panel. Once we're done introducing our panel, I'll go ahead and have an opening prayer, and then we'll get right into things. So seated directly next to me, we have Gail Mackenzie. Gail, would you briefly introduce yourself?
I am the Women's Ministries Director and Prayer Coordinator for the conference.
And next to her?
Nelson Silva. I'm the Associate Youth Director for the conference.
Steve Haley, and I serve as President of Kentucky-Tennessee Conference.
Marshall Mackenzie. I am the Church Growth Director, and I also have stewardship.
Keith Nolan. I'm the Ministerial Director for the conference.
Let's bow our heads. Heavenly Father, be here with us today. As we talk about the different resources that are available, may we recognize their purpose, that their purpose is to help bring people into the kingdom, to create unity in our churches, and to accomplish your mission for us. We pray these things in your name. Amen. So, Elder Haley, I'd like to start with you. What's the purpose of a conference?
You know, I know the discussion is resources, but indeed my answer, I think, would touch on that. And as some of the people you interviewed were responding, I found myself thinking of the number of things that the conference does contribute. Might also add that the structure of a conference is one of the things that we borrowed from our Methodist heritage, Methodist roots, and we believe divinely so. This organization that we call a conference, local conference in particular. In my mind, I go down the hallway, and I'll do this quickly. I know there's a number of talented people in this panel and a lot of questions to answer, but as I go down the hallway of the conference office, one of the first places on the right that I would stop is in the association office, and very succinctly, I would say that office, many of you are aware that perhaps you'll come back to some of these things, Ken, but trust services, wills, estates, free of charge to you. Very important matter that that office also helps navigate, and that is property issues in regards to our church, holding title to those properties, making sure that new purchases of properties within the conference are meeting the standards that are important to us, and collectively holding that property within the conference, which negates the potential that someone could break away from the faith we love and take the property with them. So there's a number of things that come out of that office. If I were to move upstairs, that office, third floor of our building, has a number of important areas of ministry. And you're going to hear from Nelson Silva and Marshall in the area of simply resources, support, strength for your church being effective in terms of ministry. And also, I smile just a bit. Perhaps Elder Knoll will both smile and grimace that it was touched upon that when there's problems in the church, there is a real strength to being in a conference family rather than in a congregational model where your congregation is independent and just on its own. And we do have resources to help. Often that help can be on some level, hey, we're there for you, we can give you advice on the phone, we'll pray for you. But when needed, indeed, we put people into the field, often it's Elder Knoll, sometimes myself, to navigate some very, very tough things. Sometimes there's legal issues, there's a lot of divisiveness, and then finally, I think I would add, and there's probably 10 other things that I'm not mentioning in the brevity of this answer, is that the really important role of the conference is to identify outstanding individuals to succeed pastors, to make sure that your congregation has a quality individual that loves the Lord, loves people, and is missional. And across the landscape of the conference, making sure we have good teachers, good departmental people, great people that serve in our support staff at Indian Creek and in the office. And that was just a quick flyby, Ken, but that's kind of my first response.
You know, I had a couple of people say, well, how are you going to talk for an hour about the resources that the conference has? And I said, really, we could probably talk all week about the resources that can come to bear on this topic, because there are so many things, and it does, I feel like the conference sometimes is very underutilized in what it has to offer. And so that's why I really wanted to dig into this. And Gail, I'm just going to start with you because you're seated right next to me. You're very involved, and I know that if anybody calls up the conference office and says, I'd like to speak with women's ministries, I'd like to speak with Gail Mackenzie, you are amazing at getting back to people, and I know you love resourcing churches. So talk about some of the resourcing that you do for local churches and the things that if they called you up that you could provide and help them with.
Well, especially if they're women's ministries leader or prayer leader in their church, we have resources that come from above us, that we have manuals, if you want to call them that we can give you that kind of have ideas in them. They give you where to go, how to start a ministry if you're just starting, or if you're you are new in the ministry, and it's been going a long time, but you are new, and you want to know, how do I even start? Where do I start? And then I like to be able to meet with the new leaders or talk to them and kind of give them some ideas that I have that are the first things that they need to do. So we've got a lot of resources. We always send out, if they're new prayer coordinator or new women's ministry leader, we have a whole packet of stuff that we send them, some books that they can read, just to encourage them to get them started. So that's one of the things.
You know, I think that also one of the things I really want to point out, I'd say everybody you see on this panel spends a lot of time on the road, doing seminars and visiting churches. And, you know, Nelson, which I'm about to get to you, you were at my church a couple weeks ago, and I said, how much are you on the road? Because I always like to ask that question, because I've been in the conference office, I'm always curious what other people are doing. And I said, how many Sabbaths a month would you say that you're at another church other than your home church? And Nelson said, most every Sabbath I'm at a different church. And I think that you'll find that most of the men and women in the conference office, usually at a minimum, are 2 to 3 Sabbaths a month that they're at somebody else's church other than their own. And that's one of the things that I do want to take just a moment to say thank you for. Because unless you have lived that lifestyle with your family, you probably don't appreciate how much sacrifice is involved. Because I know that one of the things that Rochelle and I felt in conference, when we've worked in conferences, is sometimes you feel a little bit lonely because everybody else has their home family, and when you go to your home church, you're literally treated like a visitor because you are. And so I'm really appreciative of the amount of travel that you do to resource local churches. I think it's something that ought to be said.
Yeah, I just want to, the other side of the coin of that, though, is that it is so fun for me when I get to go to the churches and I get to see women that have been to the women's retreat or been here to our seminars at camp meeting or a training that we've done, and you reconnect with them, only it's in their territory, it's in their home church, and you get to see them in their place. And I think that that's really, I love that part of it. And
so Gail, let me go ahead and jump on that question. When you go to churches, what are some of the seminars that you offer when you go visiting churches?
I do, my emphasis mostly is on prayer. We have a one-day thing that I like to do. Sometimes I bring a friend with me that helps co-do the seminar in the afternoon, but we have what we call Prayer Matters. And I usually preach for the church service, and then we have an afternoon seminar in just trying to encourage your church to do prayer ministries, to have prayer, as Ruthie said, that just prayer is your culture of your church, and that's our goal there. And then in women's ministries, I do the same thing, only how to study the Bible, maybe just some relevant things that might be for women and men. I will say I don't just speak to women, and so I usually open it up to the whole church, and so that's usually what I do.
And one of the things I want to point out that you're doing right now, I think one of the really neat things is the community service projects that you can kind of help churches coordinate. One of the things you're doing in the Madison community for Boulevard Church and Nashville First and Madison campus is you are helping put on a huge health fair. So talk about that a little bit.
Well, sometimes, specifically for women's ministries, some think that all we do is tea parties. That we just, as women, like to sit around and crochet. That's a really wonderful thing to do, by the way, because they can make some really neat things, but that are gifts and are wonderful. But, you know, I see women's ministries as women being at every level in ministry. We can be used with our gifts doing anything. And so trying to go beyond just women's retreats, but doing something where women and men can actually get involved in mission work, in local mission work. So that was kind of the the brainchild of another friend of mine, and as we got together and talked about it, and so that was our vision, to see something in a specific community that could reach out to the people with a need, especially dental care. Dental and vision are not usually covered by insurance. So we're told we will probably have many low-income to middle-income people that will come. So that's kind of what drove us to do that.
One of the really neat things that Ridgetop Church has done recently is a oil change for single moms.
We just recently did that, sponsored by our Oasis Church. And I tell you, I just had a whole new thought there. I thought, oh my word, we could have something for single moms everywhere. I will tell you, this is a growing community of women, and they feel isolated and they're alone. And I heard stories from women. You know, the one gal had a little boy who was autistic, and anyways, he knew the date of the flood. Did you know in 2010, and I think he was like 6 years old, there was a flood here and there was a lot of water, and I mean, he was gone, but he doesn't sleep. She gets 3 hours sleep a night. I mean, real needs of these single mothers. So yeah, I think something like that is really crucial.
And one of the things I'd like to point out to those of you who are viewing this or who are in our auditorium right now is that when you go to do a ministry, or you hear about an idea like what we're talking about, like a health fair or a changing oil for single moms, the temptation is go, oh, that's a great idea. Let's just run and do it ourselves. We don't need to really talk to anybody about that. But my encouragement is really call up the conference office and talk to people who have done it before. You'd be surprised the things you need to know. There is a certain amount of liability that you have if you're changing somebody's oil. And so it's really wise to kind of get some input from people who have done it and say, okay, did you have to think about any extra insurance? Did you need to make sure that you had certain equipment? And so just even if you think you know how to do it, it's not a bad thing to talk to somebody who's already done it. And again, the conference can kind of help you out and say, okay, this is what you need to know. This is what we've learned from previous experience in doing something like this. So Nelson, tell us about some of the resources that you have available to churches.
Sure, thank you for this opportunity. The first thing I would love to highlight is the communication aspect of it. If you go to our website, we're trying to create a one-stop place for all youth ministry areas. So the name of it is simple, youth. If you remember that word, you will find our website, youth.kytn.net. In there, you'll find, I don't know if the website is actually being shown right now, but you will find the resources that we're talking about. You'll find all the areas of youth ministry, but most specifically, you'll find also the newsletter, which you can sign up for. In there, in the newsletter, we highlight events, we highlight, we give a report, there you go, and we give a little worship thought, devotional thought. And at the end of it, you will find an area dedicated just for resources, the newest publications, new things that can help you in your local church, especially if you are in a small church. I just want to highlight one of them, and it's the Sabbath School. For many years, the Sabbath School is being called the orphan ministry because no one took ownership on it. So in the last few months, the Youth Sabbath School is under the Youth Department, and the North American Division has created a wonderful website with a lot of resources, weekly resources that you can go to and find tips, videos, even some games that you can use in your local church. So I think that's a wonderful resource coming from North American Division. You can find it in our website as well. In addition to that, we got training events. Let me talk, for instance, about children's ministries. If you look to your left over there, you will find a banner with several Vacation Bible School kids. Those are produced by the North American Division, and every year, next year is going to be in February, the last weekend of February, the 28th, we are going to have, in combination with South Central Conference, North American Division, and the Union, we're going to have a conference with the best experts in children's ministries come to this very place and help Sabbath school teachers, help children's ministry, especially if you are in a small church. You don't have resources. You don't know how to attract children to your church, how to begin a children's ministry, how to increase the number of attendees. It's about discipleship. How do you do that? So that's what happens in that weekend. In addition to that, we just follow the certification that North American Division is given, 8 different tracks that covers all aspects of children's ministry. So I invite you to plug into that training event that's happening every year. And let me just say a word about the Vacation Bible School put out by the North American Division. At least I'll give you 3 reasons why you should consider it. Number 1 is doctrinal safe. Sometimes some other non-denominational kids, you have, if you use them, I encourage you to look carefully and read through it. Number 2, the music stays in the middle of the road and sometimes give you some options for you, and the cost is cost efficient. And still, if you cannot afford it, I have 3 cases that I can lend to you so you can use it in your local church. In addition to that, Pastor Greg and I are available to go to your churches, help you as an outsource and resource, and consult with you in that area of children's ministries, youth ministries, young adult ministries. And it's how to do discipleship. And I summarize in 4 points. Is the discipleship, development, mission, and community. And those 2 last aspects are crucial for our youth ministries, community and mission.
You know, Nelson, one of the things I love that is kind of on your plate of things that you do is public campus ministries. And I think that this is something that's really undervalued by a lot of our churches. And the reason I think that is that in my first church district, one of my churches was the Cheney Seventh-day Adventist Church, and it was about 10 minutes away from Eastern Washington University, which is the largest university in Eastern Washington. And that church had been in existence for many, many, many years, but they were kind of a small country church, if you will. They had a lot of older members, and so they'd never felt like they could reach out to the university. And a couple of the people at the church had a passion. Unfortunately, I was able to kind of work with them a little bit and help them with that. But it was as simple, to me, it was as simple as this. The church put aside funds and allowed when we got there were 3 college students that would come about once a month and rotate through. They'd show up and then they'd leave. The church put aside funds so that those college students could start having a Friday night meal at any of their homes that they wanted to. And all we said was just let your friends know that we're paying for the meal. Awesome. And they did a Bible study and they did some stuff like that. Within a year, that church had gone from having about 25 to 30 regular attendees to having 60 to 80, and we had a lot of college students, and it was as simple as setting aside some funds for the kids to go ahead and do their own thing. And the pastor shows up, and that's important. Wonderful. But I think that one of the things that you have to offer, if you're a little church and you think, well, we have nothing but if you have a college near you and you can identify 1 or 2 kids that are Seventh-day Adventists, you have a gold mine opportunity. What kind of resources, Nelson, can you kind of help provide from your level to a church that says, well, maybe we'd be interested in thinking about that?
I'm so glad that you took us there. Public Campus Ministries, let me just say this much, is a mission field, and not just colleges, but also K through 12. they are the center of the community. We're called to go and make disciples. So if you want to go to your community, go to a public school, go to a public university, and you have there the best of the best and the center of the community right there. So what kind of resources? We have a campus catalyst conference where basically we take students to your congregation and we talk about what they are doing in their campuses, giving you ideas, helping your students to find ways to begin a small group in their campus. It's called Adventist Christian Fellowship. It's sponsored, actually, universities want students to begin those groups because that helps the students stay out of trouble.
And Nelson, isn't it true, I just want to jump in, I'm sorry, but
Sure.
Isn't it true that most universities will actually provide funding?
They will. They will.
The university will provide funding.
The university, they encourage the students to begin those groups because it's going to help in their development. And so all they got to do is to find 5 peers in most universities, go to a center and register their group, and boom, they have resources, money, they have access to the rooms, they have access to not only to the advertisement network that they have. And oftentimes, when one student starts that ministry, many others come and join. It's impressive how many of our Adventist students are in public campuses and we don't know it. So this is a good way to find them out, to provide a community for them, nurture them, help them as they are away from home. So this public campus Catalyst Conference is an effort to go to your church and help you understand all the possibilities that you have for public campus ministries. And we can talk also about K through 12. That's a wonderful opportunity that you have, and even easier for you to do ministry there.
What kind of...
I just wanted to jump in here real quick, only because he's mentioning the younger. And, you know, some of our ministries and resources kind of cross over and overlap. And, you know, one of the things for women's ministries for years now has been our young women that have been very important to us. And we've reached down even lower because, I mean, we do a young women's retreat every year. We have now a girls' club in the Madison area because of those who had helped with the young women's retreat and now saw a local opportunity to do something, an outreach there to the young girls at the academy, which I'm hoping we can kind of do the same thing here at Highland. We have involved them in some of our activities that we've done. But now we also do a mother-daughter, which is 5th through 8th grade girls and their mothers. So I think that it's really, the young people is really important, and to be able, you know, we at the conference level, we can do that because we have some resources to be able to do something on a larger scale that we can invite you to be a part of, to send your young women, your men and women, young men and women that are in our colleges and universities. We need your help in that. That's what I would say. We need you to come and let us know, hey, I have somebody, can I send them? You know, that kind of thing. Sorry.
So Nelson, with a lot of the public school, we have a lot of our Seventh-day Adventist kids that attend public schools. And I know that some people debate whether that's right, wrong, or whatever, but it doesn't, to me, the debate isn't whether it's right or wrong. The debate is it's happening, and they're there, and we need to be there to help too, and to let those kids know that yes, you are every bit as much a part of our church as our kids who happen to be in our Seventh-day Adventist schools are. So what have you seen churches do effectively to engage kids that are in public schools?
Are you talking about K through 12 or all of them in public schools?
Sure, yeah.
Many things that, one thing that many kids attending public schools feel is that they would love to be part of this network of Adventist education and they're not part of. So some of the things that small churches do or churches do is create a combined retreat for them. For instance, that's something that we are providing for public campus ministries, a retreat for all those students attending public universities, so they feel that they also been ministered to. Another things that happen to them is a mission trip that we're sponsoring, helping in our academies the students go abroad and do mission trips. In public schools, the students don't have the opportunity, and small church doesn't have the resources to provide an opportunity, a discipleship opportunity called mission trip. So we're offering that as well for students that are not able to be part of a mission trip. Sabbath school is a great opportunity for the churches can offer, and not just a Sabbath school, but contextualized to the reality in the public school system. They see a lot of things that they are unable to talk in a Christian environment in the public schools. Talking about sexual experiences, problems with violence, problems with obscenity, problems with ideology and evolution, things like that. They need to have a safe place where they can have conversations of things that are against the values that we portray in the Bible.
I think another thing that we can kind of, and I don't have Stephen Brawley up here, but I think that one of the other things that we also have to be aware of is that we have a lot of people who homeschool their children. And so I think that probably what most of our church members may not realize is how they can use their local Adventist school to actually work with homeschool families, because sometimes I think that we see it as a competition between the two, but there's a lot of things that the local Seventh Adventist school can do to be a benefit to families who are choosing to go that route. And so you can call up your education department if you're wanting to find some of those resources on how you can kind of work with the homeschool parents in your community to be a blessing for the kids that are involved with that. Exactly. Marshall, I want to jump down to you, and could you kind of share some of the resources that are available to local churches from your department?
I would say this is a fairly new department, so to speak. I mean, we're kind of all doing bits and pieces of it, but we're trying, right now we're actually in the process of actually providing or building some of the resources that they can have. Some of the things I'm currently doing to provide a resource to the churches for church growth, and I want to kind of define, I hope you don't mind, church growth in like a few different areas, because it's a broad topic, but I've kind of simplified it down to basically evangelism. I know that can be broad, but we do public evangelism. We look at church revitalization. You know, we have a lot of small churches that are looking at how do we grow, how do we be effective in the community, and then there's also the church planting aspect of church growth, because ultimately healthy churches plant other churches. That's the biblical model. And so our goal is, and we have some church plants that we currently work with, so, and then I have stewardship, which kind of ties right into those areas, because to be a good disciple, you have to be a good steward. So those things kind of tie together. So I'm doing evangelistic series on the public side of evangelism. We also are building a discipleship process into that, versus just a meeting, you leave, you go do another meeting, but there's some follow-up that we're trying to work out with them, whether it's using social media, whether it's using our website that we've created to keep contact and to continue the follow-up for the work that's happening. I also have been asked, and we provide training in the local churches where I'll go in for a week and actually work with them on how do we reach our community, give us some practical, how do I reach my neighbor? You know, it really comes down to communication and conversation. And many times we're afraid to have those conversations with people because we just don't know how to have the conversation, spiritually speaking. And yet there's models given in Scripture for how Jesus connected with people. And so we do a week training on personal evangelism, reaching your community. And so those are some of the current things where I'm going through. The NAD is also providing some things in missional church and how to be a missional church, and I'm going through some of those resources now to try to start to build some other resources in regards to what a church can have. If it's not me, at least there's some resources they can pull from, and we want to be able to provide that online, and we want to be able to provide that so that it's at their fingertips, so to speak, and they can get that. The other thing is next year I'm hoping to do one training event, like a one Sabbath, for each of those areas. So we would live stream it so that the churches can participate that want to be able to participate. So in other words, we would do something on evangelism, we do something on church planting, church growth, or church revitalization, and stewardship. And we'll tie those in, but we'll pick a Sabbath, a church that would like to participate, live stream it from that church to the other churches. We can archive for those that aren't able to be involved, and then give them resources, and I would follow up in going to those churches after those meetings to continue the process.
That's awesome to be able to leverage the technology we have, because I think that I really do think these seminars are most effective in a local church, and yet if you go, it used to be if you only went to one local church, it was hard for everybody to get those resources. So that's great.
Yeah, that's another resource that I really believe in. You know, I'm one person, and as you were discussing earlier about the travel, and you can only get so far, but with the technology we have, and I want to be careful when I say this, but I really believe that, these other ministries, like It Is Written and Amazing Fact, they leverage the technology. And what happens is our churches many times are on the outside looking in when it comes to evangelism, but when it started, it was on the inside looking out. It started from the local church. And so utilizing those resources empowers the local church to really reach their community, not in a long period of time, but very, very quickly they can start making contacts. And so we're building a database right now and a website, and we'll build one for church growth that allows for this communication and follow-up to continue using those resources. One other resource, just real quick, is Fishnet, it's basically your database of interests at your fingertips. So you could say, I'm going to go reach so-and-so today, and you can look at the app, and you can actually find out where all of your contacts are in the community. They're flags on a map within a 50-mile radius of where your church is. And you can click on that, and that interest now becomes yours, and you can type notes in it on your phone, what the follow-up is, and it gives pastors more control because they can see all that information at their fingertips as well. So we're trying to do some of those kind of things.
That's really neat. So if somebody was wanting to, I know you touched on it, but I want to be repetitive so it gets into people's minds. How do people find out more about the resources you were just talking about? Can they go to the web? Do they call you? What's the best way to kind of...
The best way right now is to call. If you, and we're building some of the things. If you go to thepropheticvoice.info, we will attach that to the conference website under church growth. I haven't been able to get to that part yet, but we're trying to sync that with our current conference website so that they can go on there and they can and see what is available in regards to the evangelistic process. But right now, probably the best way is to call me. I will come to the church to do trainings, and we'll begin the relationship, and I'm willing to work with the pastors. I'm really just want to walk alongside them and just aid them in the process.
Maybe just quickly, we could put up, if our tech people could put up propheticvoiceinfo.org.
Yeah, it's the
Can you get that on the screen?
.info. I think they had a picture. I don't know if it was last Sabbath we had showed it.
If they can.
Oh, yeah, whenever you, if our tech people can put it up whenever you get a chance.
But the best way right now is to just call the conference and talk to me. And then you can also find the Prophetic Voice on Facebook. We are also using that platform. We're using Twitter, and so we're in the process of really getting the information out there regularly.
And by the way, I just as a reminder to everybody who's listening to this, if you're wanting to get a hold of the Kentucky-Tennessee Conference, their phone number is not hard to find. If you have access to Google, all you have to do is type in Kentucky-Tennessee Conference and phone number, and it will pop right up. And the people who work at the phones are wonderful. There's been more than one time I've tried to call the conference office and couldn't remember somebody's name. I said, you know that person that does that thing with stewardship thing? And they're really good at reading your mind, so and super helpful. So, call up the conference and ask. If you have a question about something, the people at the phone banks are really good. So here we have on the screen, you should be able to see the website that we were just talking about, the Prophetic Voice. that you can kind of get more of this information from. And again, the Kentucky Tennessee Conference website, kytn.net, is just a great place to go to look for resources. If you can't remember a name of a director, just click on there. All of the directors have a picture of themselves. Their email is clickable there. You can click to send an email. There's phone numbers on the website. So,
and I'm so new. Sorry, Gail.
No, I was just going to say Facebook is another place. I think you have Facebook too.
Yeah,
That's
there's
another
a
place.
Facebook.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know Women's Ministries does it.
I'm so new that if you're looking for my face, it's under ministerial. So it's right next to this gentleman right here. Eventually we'll work that out, but I work very closely with Keith, and I really appreciate it.
yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about? Any?
You know, my real goal, to be honest with you, is, for our churches to be a light in the community, and I go back to what Nelson was talking about. It really comes down to discipleship. And what disciples look like. We want to be able, many of our church members don't even know what kind of church members they're around. In other words, they don't know each other well enough. And sometimes what happens is we expect the community to know us, but yet we don't really interact as much and know ourselves. And so that discipleship process has to start internally first before it can really make an impact externally. We need to do the external things, don't get me wrong, to reach our community. But our goal is to help the churches really be strong internally so that there's a discipleship process that's active and going forward in the local church so that that process is repeated with those individuals that begin coming from the community. And you were talking earlier, we have potential in every single one of our churches. And I was talking to one of the pastors here a few days ago, and he was asking me some things about his community, and I was just asking questions, and I realized he has a ministry that's going on, and there's potential right underneath it. Sometimes we don't have to do 20 or 30 things. We just need to do 3 or 4 things very well. And so sometimes we wear more hats because we think we have to be a certain way. We wear more hats than we really need to. We have 5 people doing 20 things rather than just 5 people doing 5 effective things. And so those are kind of things we want to drill down on so that churches can be more effective in their community, and they can be that at any size.
Marshall, I think that's such a great point. A couple days ago at one of our panel discussions, Pastor Nacho was talking about using what's in your hand. In so many local churches, they're looking at what other churches are doing, and yet they already have some people in their church that have this neat little ministry that if they would just focus their resources onto that, it would do huge things in their community.
It's like the statement, and I'll stop here, where Sister White, she says, we work on the principle of addition, God works on the principle of multiplication. Many times we switch and we think we have to multiply when we have to add, and he takes our adding and he multiplies it. So, understanding that process.
Awesome. Keith, tell us a little bit about what ministerial and evangelism has to offer for resources for local churches.
There's a lot of great resources out there, and I just want to say before we get into this that every department in the conference office is huge. It's important. Appreciate all the things that these guys bring to the table. I think it's awesome. And so whatever your passion is out there, we've got a resource for it and can help you out. If we don't have the resource, we will find it and get it to you. But when it comes to ministers, we have ministers meetings twice a year, and we provide training, some of the best speakers that we can find on different subjects. We have zone groups or zone meetings where different districts throughout the conference, pastors can get together once a month, twice a month, whatever they set up, so that they can support one another, so they can encourage one another, and they can also bring training into the mix.
Keith, can I ask you a real quick question? I'm sure that some churches view their pastors leaving twice a year and they think, what's the point of, I mean we're missing our pastor at our local church. Why, what are they running off to do anyway? What's the benefit for getting all the pastors together? I mean, I think probably you and I have an idea of it, but maybe for people out there who are like, well, are they just getting together to, just goof around and get away from their churches for a weekend or two? Or what's the benefit for these meetings?
We have leadership training. It's for leadership training. It's for learning different aspects. Maybe successful small groups might be one. What are some of the new innovative things that are happening with friendship evangelism or personal evangelism? It covers there's so many different aspects when it comes to ministry. And every time we have a workers meeting, we try to focus on one of those aspects. And so it really is continuing education is what it is. Do we have fun? You bet we have fun when we do our workers.
I know that continuing education is a huge part. Nelson, I want to come to you here in a second, but I know that for me, one of the things as a pastor is that so many times, especially our pastors who are in smaller districts, you are constantly feeding others. You're preaching, and it is just a beautiful thing to sit down and have somebody share God's word with you.
Yes.
And to receive some of that, especially when you don't have that opportunity as often.
Just want to add, as a pastor, as a departmental, one of the benefits of those meetings is networking as well. It's so much. It's a blessing to hear somebody else's experience. Somebody else is struggling with the same thing you're struggling, and hearing how they have figured some things out. It is a blessing just to have that networking and peer ministry, partner ministries.
Sorry for breaking in on you.
No, I think it's all good. I think it's great. Also, to help out the ministers, we have also elder certification where Ralph Ringer, the union evangelism coordinator, he comes in and he helps do some training on different aspects for the elders, like lay preaching and lay visitation, visiting missing members. We're always available on call anytime a minister has an issue, a complexing thing that they're facing. They can call me, Elder Haley, or Elder Rose, or any of us with those situations. We have ministry hotline, and I only had to use, in my ministry, I only had to use it one time, but boy, it was a lifesaver. It was a complex situation where I was at the time. The ministerial director could not be of any help to me because his relatives were involved. And I called up a former ministerial director who was now president, and I also called up Mission Hotline. I told him the scenario. They laid it out for me. I followed it to the letter, and it worked just beautiful. And so we have all kinds of resources. Maybe you're trying to plant a new church. We have Mission Insight. It's a demographic study, and it's one of the best demographic studies I've ever seen. They can show you where a group, segment of people live. If you're wanting to start a Hispanic church, they'll show you where most of the Hispanics are. They can give you the names, the addresses. You can make contact. It is just an awesome program. We also are open for any training sessions. Marshall here, Pastor Marshall's open to that, and he has various ones. I do ones on how to give Bible studies. He does that too, I'm sure. Small groups, how to start a small group that's mission-oriented and not just a in-focus thing, but also friendship evangelism and, different ideas on how to do outreach when it comes to bridging events. We have evangelism boot camp once a year where lay people can come and learn how to do evangelism. We also have EC3, Evangelism Council, every fall. They have some of the top speakers that you can possibly get talking about different aspects. So what I'm trying to say is we try to provide a lot of education. I mean, we could go on and on. We have continuing education funds where you can tap into to go to a seminar on your own or buy some books or maybe even buy a computer possibly. The bridging events, we supply $1,250 for any church. It's got to be approved, but we supply $1,250 for like creation, health seminars, depression recovery, marriage seminars, parenting seminars, you name it, we'll help you out. We also, of course, provide for evangelism meetings. 80%, we'll pay for 80% of the meeting. But the most important thing, I've got to stress on that. People sometimes put down evangelism meetings, and if you don't do them properly, they don't work. But if you'll do the culture of evangelism, if you sow the seed and you're actually working it, cultivating, watering it, fertilizing it, you can still have a harvest in public evangelism. And so there's many other things that we help people with. I'm just so glad we've got these 2 new positions. I really appreciate the campus ministry that Nelson is doing. That's opened up some huge doors. I'm so glad that Marshall is here and that he's offering he's got a vast experience with literature evangelism, with being a pastor, being a missionary, working for Amazing Facts as the director of AFCO. So I think there's a lot of, I think our conference has the possibilities of doing many, many great things. I think the sky is the limit. And if you're looking for ideas, go to Advent Source. They've got training videos on there, all kinds of great training videos on any subject that you want to take a look at. And these are from from the top people in their field.
And again, if you're hearing this, you're hearing a lot of information being thrown out in a really short amount of time. So if something sticks in your mind, you don't remember it, give the conference office a call. There actually is some really amazing video training resources within the church right now that you can take advantage of. And again, any one of these people on this panel can help you out with that. If you just want to call up the conference or send probably sending an email is even better, because they can just send you the link. You can click on it and away you can go. I don't want to leave out Nourish, because I think that people don't realize all the different things that Nourish can do for you. I'm a pastor, and I'm pretty familiar with what Bible studies and books and things are available, but I'll often give Doug Thompson a call and say, hey, I'm looking for this kind of a resource. I've got this person. is there anything new that's kind of come out? And Doug Thompson, our general manager, is fantastic at he knows all the different resources, what's coming out, what's on sale. That can be a really nice thing to know too, what's affordable. And so I don't like sticking with I don't like sticking with just Amazing Facts Bible Studies or Voice of Prophecy. I like finding a Bible study that I think is going to work with that person that I'm working with. And each one of them are tailored a little bit differently to a little bit of a different segment. And if you're not sure about that, again, Doug Thompson, Keith, Marshall, they can give you ideas on which one would probably be the best one for the group that you're trying to do Bible studies with. So Doug Thompson's a fantastic resource at Nourish, and again, that website's on our church website, on the Kentucky Tennessee Conference website. Steve, I wanted to go back to something that, Elder Haley, I wanted to go back to something that you talked about right at the very beginning, which was trust services. Unfortunately, a lot of people put off having their wills done, and in most states, that can be a real problem when you pass away, because what that means is that your estate, then the state decides how things are going to be dispersed rather than you deciding how it's going to be done. And so you'd mentioned earlier a service that's provided free of charge. It literally costs you absolutely nothing. Can you tell people how they would take advantage of that service?
Well, let me appropriately brag for just a moment on our Trust Service Director, Silka Hubbard. She has been invested in the ministry of trust services for well over 20 years. She is our Trust Service Director at Kentucky Tennessee Conference. In fact, her expertise and skill in this position is such that across North America, and this has happened during my tenure as president over the last 9 years, numerous conferences who have hired brand new trust service directors and asking the North American division, where could our brand new trust service director, who doesn't have the background in it but the potential to be a good trust service director, where could they go to orient? Where could they go to learn? And they send them to Nashville, Tennessee, to Kentucky Tennessee Conference to spend a few days with Soka Hubbard. So that's just simply a way of saying, with complete candor and authenticity, there's a great director that heads up that department. You can be assured that your needs, your interests would be handled with great sensitivity and with appropriate prioritization of what you think is important in your legacy, your estate, what you would like to leave behind at the time of your demise. And so probably all of us seated here have a trust or will. I know my wife and I had ours updated with Kentucky Tennessee Conference. And you might even ask, well, so we said it's free. Well, it is. It's free in this sense. We mentioned the other day in a panel discussion about the tithing and the use of tithe. So we learned that 75 cents of each dollar you contribute stays in the Kentucky Tennessee Conference. Well, everything we're talking about today is funded by that 75 cents of each dollar that you contribute. So free, yes, in this sense, there is no added expenses to you to have a trust or a document drawn up. In fact, you might say, well, is it required that I leave something to the work of the Lord? No, it's not. We're grateful for those who do, who have a conviction that at the time they go to sleep in Jesus, they want to leave behind part of that asset to continue to contribute to the kingdom of God. But that's not required. And so knowing that we're almost out of time, I might just say briefly, you've kind of picked up a common theme, I think, in the things that have been shared today by this panel. And I hope the common theme you heard is that the Kentucky Tennessee Conference is you. It's not just a building on Conference Drive in Goodlettsville, but you are the conference. And we simply are there to serve you and to have as our greatest purpose the missional reason for which we exist, to proclaim, to live out the gospel message in the context of the three angels' message, recognizing that Jesus is coming soon. So you've heard rightly today a bit of promotion, because these services exist for you and for your church, but it's all for the reason and purpose to be faithful to the Lord, to do the work He's assigned us, to build the kingdom of God, and to very, very soon, we trust and believe, go home with Him. So it's all for you, and thank you again for your faithfulness. I'm giving just another little plug for the tithe dollar. Sometimes a misunderstood dollar, but everything we've talked about, and a lot of things we haven't talked about, the ministry of Indian Creek Camp, our vast education network of schools and students, that probably garners the largest part of that 75 cents from the dollar. All of that is done, and we're able to do it because of your faithfulness. So I want to say on behalf of Kentucky Tennessee Conference Administration, thank you to each of you who contribute, trusting us to do our best with your asset, your tithe dollar, and I want to assure you that we will continue to do our very best with God's blessing.
There are two more things that I really want to make sure that I don't leave off. We didn't cover Indian Creek Camp. We didn't cover education. We didn't cover some of the bigger ones that I think that you're probably more aware of. Publishing, there's some of those, but there's two other things I really want you to be aware of. Firstly is health ministries. There are tremendous resources. If you want to do a stop smoking clinic, if you want to put on a creation health seminar, all the resources are there for you to do it. You basically borrow it from the conference and can return it. And there's a booth right over there in the middle of the... There's a booth right over there. You can find out more.